Hello, welcome to Spirit Groups. We are looking at the wonderful work of Byron Katie. She calls it the work, and it really is a wonderful work. Part of the depth of it is it's a meditation process to look at stuff that comes up for us, to be present to it in a way that helps us see through it to the truth that we're spiritual beings. And so we have this stuff that sort of gets in the way, and the work is about clearing that out so that we can live with a sense of joy and expansiveness in our lives. So to start, I'd like to have you have a get-to-know-you question. So the question I invite you to share with each other is, if you had no limitations, what would you choose to do? So take a moment to share that with everybody in your group. If you had no limitations, what would you choose to do? You can pause the video now. Welcome back. Hope you had a good time getting to know each other in a little bit deeper way. One of the things that amazes me about the work of Byron Katie is how she is able to use herself as an example about how this works. She has a story in her book, Loving What Is, and she talks about just how the way that we see things may not be the way it actually is. Here's what she says. Once I walked into a ladies' room in a restaurant near my home. A woman came out of the single stall. We smiled at each other, and then I closed the door. She began to sing and wash her hands. What a lovely voice, I thought. Then, as I heard her leave, I noticed that the toilet seat was dripping wet. How could anyone be so rude, I thought. And how did she manage to pee all over the seat? What was she, standing on it? Then it came to me that she was a man, a transvestite, singing falsetto in a woman's restroom. It crossed my mind to go after him, and let him know what a mess he'd made. As I cleaned the toilet seat, I thought about everything I'd say to him. Then I flushed the toilet. Water shot up out of the bowl and flooded the seat, and I just stood there laughing. In that case, the natural course of events was kind enough to expose my story before it went any farther. Usually it doesn't, before I found inquiry. I had no way to stop the thinking. Small stories became bigger ones. Bigger stories bred major theories about life. So it's a wonderful example that she gives us about how we take something and we have a story that we make up about it. And we live in that story and our upset and disappointment and frustration. And that's the energy that we're in, which means that's the energy we bring to our lives. So if we want to shift that, we have to use inquiry. And Byron Katie has this wonderful process that she calls the work, which is being aware. And she has a worksheet. And I really invite you to make several copies of the worksheet for yourself, to fill it out so you really get in. And she invites us to really get into the story, to meditate on what our experience was, what we were feeling, what we were thinking, and then to ask the questions. And I'm going to have you look at a video of her explaining the questions and the turnarounds at the end. So here comes the video.
So the work is a way to identify what you yourself are believing, to identify the thoughts that cause all the suffering in the world. For example, you identify a concept or an assumption that you are thinking, believing is causing stress, and you put it up against the following questions. The first question, is it true? Second question, can you absolutely know that it's true, this assumption you're believing? Third question, notice how you react. What happens when you believe that thought, when you're thinking that thought? Fourth question, who would you be without that thought? What would your life be without that thought? So, for example, if you have the thought, he doesn't care about me, and you ask yourself, is it true? He doesn't care about me. Is it true? The work is meditation. It's contemplation. It takes very deep stillness, because what arises to meet that question is pure knowledge, yours. You know, you're the teacher you've been waiting for, and the stillness as you wait for that answer within you to meet, is it true? Amazing things happen. In fact, enlightenment happens. So the second question, can you absolutely know that it's true? Let's say your answer to the first question is yes. Yes, it's true. He doesn't care about me. He told me he doesn't care about me. And so the second question, can you absolutely know that it's true? It gives you an opportunity to experience amazing other ways of seeing that same idea. So I invite you to test it and to see how widely and vastly your mind can open just through the experience of that second question. Can you absolutely know that it's true that he doesn't care about you, or whatever concept and assumption you're questioning? So the third question, how do you react when you believe that thought? How do you react? What happens when you think that thought, that he doesn't care about you or she doesn't care about you? So notice first, emotionally, how that concept shifts your feelings. Notice your heart rate. Notice a depression that may begin to happen. Notice how you react, what happens when you think that thought. Notice the images of past and future that arise when you think that thought. And of course, the emotional comes out of witnessing that apparent past or future that is in your mind's eye now. So that fourth question, who would you be without the thought? He doesn't care about you. Who would you be without the thought? And I'm not asking you to drop the thought. I'm simply asking you to contemplate, to become very still and imagine yourself even with that person. Imagine yourself at the market. Imagine yourself with or without that person, only without the thought, he doesn't care about you. So many of us come to understand very quickly as we experience the answers to these four questions. And the answers, that's where the power is, not in the work, but your answers. So what people begin to notice is that with the thought, that is the cause of all stress and suffering. And without the thought, you cannot suffer. So eventually people will come to understand that it is what we are believing that is the cause of our depression, our stress, our heart rate, our emotional, and not what is happening in the world. For example, I see the world as perfect, everything perfect, no mistake. And I see that what we're believing about the world, now that could use a little work. So we continue to work on the world to change it. And I'm not saying don't try to change it. I'm simply saying until we work with what we're believing, that we are going to continue to produce in the world the same war that has been going on since mind first began to attach to what it sees, a belief system that for me can no longer be valid. And this is what I invite you to. So then I invite you to consider the opposites. I call it turnarounds. So for example, he doesn't care about me. Turned around to an opposite, he does care about me. And then to become very still again, always remembering that the work is meditation. And notice genuine examples of where he does care about you. And your mind might scream, this is impossible, he doesn't. And to be gentle with that, and good, that's fine, and continue to find genuine examples of where he does care. And that's the invitation. Another, an opposite, he doesn't care about me. Another opposite is, I don't care about him. And that may sound insane. And yet I ask you to find genuine examples to find genuine examples of where you have been uncaring toward him. And then in that, you may even want to apologize and make amends and make it right with yourself and him. That's what it requires, for you to be right with yourself. Another turnaround, original concept, he doesn't care about me. Another turnaround, I don't care about me. And this can be stunning at first. And I invite you to get very still and to begin to find the genuine examples of where you have not been caring about yourself. And that, I invite you to illuminate yourself just by contacting what is already within you, to allow it to be born through these 4 questions and turnarounds that I call the work. If you consider, after doing the work, you have the thought, let's say, he doesn't care about me, and it could be that you experience humor, and then you begin to notice that it was absurd. And then you begin to notice that what used to cause depression when you had that thought now brings a kind of wonderful amusement to it. So this is the difference between depression and no depression, and I see it as the difference between asleepness and awakeness, or unenlightenment and enlightenment, to just one concept. That's just one concept. And questioning one concept can change what you believe about everything.
Here's her simple way of putting what the process is. Be aware of the pain, write it down, ask the questions, turn it around. So if we can do this, it again helps us be present to all that energy in a way that helps it dissipate. So we can have that clarity to, again, be the spiritual beings that we're created to be, instead of having all that clutter of energy of mind thought that doesn't work for us. So as we're practicing this, again, the main thing that she really emphasizes is writing it down, because otherwise the mind will play tricks on us. It'll take and create another story out of what's going on, about how things should be different other than they are. And so I invite you to stay with that in your life. One of the things you want to look at is with the book, Loving What Is. If you get the book, I invite you to read it through chapter 4 to be prepared for next week. And I invite you to go to the website. It's thework.com, thework.com. And there's the worksheets you can download. There's a feelings list to help you get in touch with feelings, because we live in a culture that sort of cancels our feelings. And there's a little version of the book on there that you can download for free. There's video dialogues you can watch, and there's also access to an app. Now, Reverend Shara says the app is a little quirky, but it works. So I invite you to look at that. The other thing that's important is support each other in this process, because we all have our stories that we tell that interfere with our spiritual progress. Next week, we'll go a little bit deeper, but thanks for being a part of this right now. Well, I trust that you've had a good session and that stuff has come up and you've been able to look at it in a different way. Remember, I invite you, if you have the book, read through chapter 4 next week. And just as you go through this week, just practice being aware about the stories that you're telling yourself and what the experience is for you with those stories, and then meditate on what your experience would be without those stories. So remember, you're doing the work for you so that you can be a greater blessing in the world. See you next week.